today's subject, has anybody read ahead to the last chapter? And in the flow of life? He really, in this chapter, he's basically talking about, okay, when does life end and what happens? Death. Not anybody's favorite subject. But thinking about the examples that we've, used, a river. What happens at the end of the river?
It flows into, it doesn't really have an end.
Right, it doesn't end. What happens to it?
It flows into something else, or it becomes something different, or part of something different.
Like what?
Well, I was thinking it may sink into the ground, but it's still there, you know.
Well, that's true. Some of it, as it goes along, some of it sinks into the ground because the ground needs water to create rivers.
But it keeps going. It keeps flowing into something else, into the ocean.
That's right. It always flows into something else. And eventually the something else is the ocean, the big ocean, which, you know, is kind of like the ocean has been around as long as the world, as long as the earth, as far as we know, right? And so a river, although it covers a certain part of the geography of the earth, it has a certain expression, flows from where it comes up from the earth to where it becomes a part of the ocean. And that's a constant, ongoing flow. How about if we say that any individual isn't a river, now we're saying it's a wave in the ocean. What happens to waves?
They're part of the ocean.
It's always a part of the ocean. Yeah.
They rise, they fall, they
rise, they fall, they break on the beach. And the amazing thing that Butterworth pointed out in his book, which I was not aware of, is if you've got something floating in the ocean out past the waves, it stays there.
Yeah.
It doesn't, the apparent motion of the waves doesn't bring it to the shore. It just stays where it is. So the water isn't really moving, even though it looks like it's moving.
Yeah.
It's always, always a part of the ocean. And although it seems to constantly be coming onto the earth, it's not going anywhere. So those are a couple of the examples that we've discussed, we've used as images or as examples, as illustrations of the flow of life, life flowing. But when we really look at these examples, they don't end. So what Butterworth is pointing out is that there is...
Professor?
Yes.
I want to add something. You were saying about the wave of the river or about the ocean. So I want to add something that by the flow of the river of the ocean, it can be compared by the lifestyle of a human being, because the lifestyle of a human being is like the wave of a river.
Is like the width?
Wave
wide.
of a river,
Wave.
rivers.
Okay.
Of a river, or the flow of a river, the flow of the river. So that, because if we see the river, or if we see the flow of the water or wave of the water in the river, then we can usually compare it to the lifestyle of human being, because the lifestyle of human being is full of struggles, it's full of pains, it's full of it's full of
To interrupt,
struggles.
Kazri.
And
Yeah, I think you are trying to talk about the ups and downs of lives. Yeah, right?
yeah,
You are-
obviously the
Well,
ups and
rivers
downs.
have
Yeah,
ups and downs too, but you're only mentioning the hard stuff. Life also has, good times and enjoyment and fun. That's also part of life.
yes,
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of experiences that happen as part of life. Yes. And I would suggest, based on these lessons that we've been doing, that our lives can feel really difficult and hard and a struggle, as long as that's what we're paying attention to. But if we pay attention to the good times, that's what we feel, that's what we experience more, is the good part, the good aspects. There's an interesting exercise I'm going to suggest to you as looking at your life story. Most of us, most of the time, if we're introducing ourselves to people, we tell them our age, maybe we tell them what we're doing, where we live, what our name is. And if we're really introducing ourselves to somebody, eventually we'll tell them all the bad stuff that's happened to us, all the challenges. If you want somebody to really be a deep friend, you share with them. And we say, that's our life story. When I got kicked out of this, and when I lost that, and when so-and-so died, and those are the milestones that many people pay attention to in telling their life story. And I did this exercise a couple of months ago, and I was amazed that I could also tell my life story by telling all the good things that happened to me, not even mention the bad stuff. That, I could tell about what I thoroughly enjoyed when I was a little kid, and what I loved about school, and what I enjoyed doing when I was a child and an adolescent, and what things about, university and graduate school I really enjoyed, and kept going through, meeting my first partner, and feeling so excited, and just telling all the good things. It was a whole different life story.
Professor, you are talking about the first day of your school, right?
Yeah, but if I told the story just focusing on what I liked, what I enjoyed, what I grew from, what was wonderful that happened to me, usually two things. A, it made me feel very different. Made me feel like, wow, have I ever been lucky in my life? And also, many of the really good things came right after a bad thing. So when I lost my teaching job, oh my God, that was the end of life at that moment. But in fact, I got another job, which took me further, which was better than the one I lost. You know, and even when I have had important people die in my life, the sorrow was pretty bad, the grief. And it was after dealing with grief and with sorrow that new opportunities came, new things opened up. And they were much better than what I had before. Does that sound familiar to anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, because opportunities seem to appear when we need them. Perhaps they're there all the time, but we don't notice them because we're so busy with everything else.
Exactly. I think we notice them when we have a hole, when we have a void. We are available to move on into this new area, which is typically better in whatever way it needs to be better. It's really an interesting view of the struggles that you mentioned, Kazi, and the scary times, like I'm sure Syed is going through now. You know, that after that, we become aware of new opportunities. So, you know, I could say in my life that I've been 7 or 8 different people, you know, once every 8 to 10 years, basically. Anyway, so now we're talking about the last chapter of In the Flow of Life. And Butterworth made the last chapter about life and death, about what happens at the end of life. You know, realistically speaking, is there an awareness, is there something of us that goes on that's eternal? And we were just talking about the, you know, the examples we've used about the flow. Those, like a river, doesn't die, doesn't go away. It becomes part of something bigger, or a part of a bigger system, just for one example. And so we're beginning to look at, okay, what is it of us that didn't really begin when we are bodies, when we were born in our bodies? Have you ever looked at a little baby and just seen amazing awareness, amazing life there? Just infinite awareness. If you look at a baby's face, it's really quite amazing. And then as the baby becomes aware of its new individual self in the body, you know, that bigger global awareness fades away, but it's still there within all of us because that's life. And if you have been with a person dying, you know that they experience a wonderful, peaceful going forward. I don't know how many of you have had that experience. I'm a certified chaplain, which means that I work with people at the end of life. And so there are quite a few people that I have been with at that time. And there's always something bigger about it. You know, there's a bigger oneness that you can watch and experience the person that you are being present for. Meeting people that are also beyond the physical life where they knew each other. The light that they become aware of, that sometimes they radiate, that we can see and feel. You know, it's really quite amazing. And the other place where there's been a lot of accounts now of people who died and then didn't stay dead. Happens often in surgery, for instance, that they go outside of their body, they leave the body, and they're, you know, they are beginning to become aware outside of the body. And some of them have been in that later state for hours. And then for some reason, they come back to the body and continue with this life. But they are always changed, always much more aware of the eternal nature of life. The fact that life is not just in one body. We are part of something way bigger than ourselves. And they lose their fears that come from being tuned in just to one body in one place. That's called near-death experiences. There's an organization here in Durham called the International Near-Death Association, INDA. Yeah.
Professor,
Yes.
I want to add something that you are saying about the end of the life. What will be happening in a person's attribution or other things. So I think that the end of the life is most important for a person to handle himself or herself, because we the people or we the human being are mortal. So man is mortal. So one day we will die, right? So we have to do something great. We have to do something better. We have to do something good for the welfare of the human being, for the welfare of the society, as well as for the welfare of the whole world or a society. So I think that it will be very grateful or very helpful for everybody or for a person himself or herself if he or she can bear a very good struggle and do many types of jobs and can create and can have a legendary thing. On my opinion.
Legendary. Yeah. Tell me what legendary means to you.
Yeah, legendary means something, creating something great for the welfare of the human being.
I think it's great that you feel that way. And I know I felt that way when I was your age. And somewhere in my 30s, I began to realize, hey, wait a minute. I am not on a path to being famous, to doing something that everybody's going to know what I did that was wonderful. So I've learned over time that, yes, that's important. And we, by being a person who loves, and let's continue thinking about the end of life. He says, and I agree, that we are born and die as who we are a bunch of times in our life. Kazi, are you the same person now as when you were 6?
Sorry, Professor, when I am the same person when I was
6 years old?
No, when I was 6 years old, I don't even know. I don't even know about my surroundings, about my environment, and about what is happening and what is going on around me. So
So-
I don't know. So, but now I can understand. I can understand my family. I can understand my environment, and obviously, and nonetheless, I can undoubtedly I can understand the whole universe. But I am sometimes I think about the. I used to go in imagination, or sometimes I even become a fantasy mood in a fantasy mood.
You can still do that.
Yeah.
You can. And your fantasy now will not be the same as it was when you were 6 years old.
No, when I was 6 years old, even though when my parents told me, oh, my fellow, my son, do that, do this, I obey my parents listening and obey them.
Mhm. And if and as you get to be 30 and 40 and 50 and 60 and 70 and 80 and 90, you will continue to become a different person in your awareness. And so everybody has been a bunch of different people in their lives. Syed, I bet that's really true for you, that you have, because you've had the kinds of experiences you have in these last few years, you are a very different person than when you were, say, 10. Yes, exactly. And
Syed has given a thumbs up.
yep, I know. And that's a good response. And, so this life in this body and in this place, wherever we are and wherever we find ourselves, which may not have anything to do with the place we are now, is an opportunity to keep graduating, to keep moving, to keep becoming. And when we move into new awareness, the old awareness drops away. It's no longer our primary awareness. And that's life. We go through life, and this is what happens. And I was very, very close to, I have been very, very close to a few people, but I had a spouse who died 11 years ago, and she died suddenly. And it was very interesting because we worked together. We didn't only live together, we also were healing other people as a team. And so when she died, my first reaction was I totally fell apart. Like my whole life needed to be put back together piece by piece. And as I did that, as I went through that process, I realized that in many ways, she was going to still be with me, that, she was no longer with me physically. But I still loved her. And I still was in communication with her in a sort of strange way, that she was still helping me to find what was mine to do and to move forward and do it. So that was one of the big transformation points in my life. And as I went through that process, that's when I started meditating out of desperation because I didn't know what to do. And she had meditated. So I thought, okay, that was helpful to her. I'm going to start doing it. It was helpful to me. That was where I finally, after having received the inner message for 40 years that I should become a spiritual teacher, that's finally when I said yes. And I went to seminary. And so that was the beginning of a whole new period of my life, a whole new person. It feels like a lifetime that I didn't expect. And it's been very satisfying. And I am still aware that her energy is a part of me, as she took some of my energy with her, that I took some of her energy and kept it with me. I don't know how else to explain it, but at first there were all kind of weird things that happened. I got messages and phone calls that were from her, even though she was dead. And one day we were looking for something in her office and turned around, and there it was on the floor where it hadn't been before. So this kind of strange stuff that happened at that disturbed point. And that hasn't continued, and that's fine. But I am aware that she has continued to grow and learn and develop, as have I, and that we're still connected. Love does not go away when somebody dies that you love. You still love them. And that love means that, you're still connected in some way. So that's one of the kinds of things that people learn when they have a near-death experience. And so I mentioned that organization because they keep an archive of near-death experiences, if it's something that interests you. You don't have to pay attention to it, but it might interest you. And in that case, it's a very interesting set of information. And there are a couple of books, like Anita Morjani was somebody who, was very sick and died and was dead for a long time, overnight, and came back into her body and was healed. How do you explain stuff like that? But she has written about what she became aware of, how her awareness changed in that experience. So, it's not all what it seems physically, is basically the message. And we all know that we have a deep connection with other people and with other beings. We can be very loving with a cat or a bird or another organism, another being that shares our life, or dog. And, that's love. And we grieve when we lose one of those life companions. And when we're out in nature, we know that we're connected with everything. So, life isn't just who I am in this body at this time.
Professor, it can be said that every elements of nature is connected to each other.
That every element of what?
Every elements of the nature is connected to each other.
Yes, definitely. And I mean, if you can go outside and just be in a quiet place in nature, we know that. We feel it. It's wow, it's amazing. So that's something that also tells us there's more to our awareness than our years in this body, in this lifetime. And when we really reflect on this and experience it and, make it a part of us, it changes our awareness of what are we supposed to do while we're here? What's important to do? And, fame is okay, but what's really important is how we be, how we are, how we grow our awareness, and how we are able to be supportive and helpful to others in the moment, in the present moment. That's really what counts. And I'm not saying anything you haven't heard before. Butterworth points out that the Western world, and I'm not sure it's not true of people all over the world, is haunted, I'm quoting, by the incredible delusion, which means the made-up story, the false idea that humankind was created out of nothing, and that our present lifetime is our first experience of life. That's what we're told, isn't it? And that's where your lack of teamwork comes from, is from people thinking, okay, I've got so many years and I need to get to the top, and it doesn't matter if what happens to anybody else. And that's a story. That's all it is a story. It's an illusion. It's a false story.
Professor, it can be said that teamwork is more important than becoming popular.
Yeah, exactly. Living authentically and honestly and lovingly in the present moment with the people that are around us is what is really important in our lives. And you know that the present moment keeps moving along. So we can't stay with what happened yesterday that made us happy. We got to keep moving along because the present moment is always now. How many of you have read the poet Khalil Gibran? I think he was Persian.
Sorry, Professor, which poet?
Khalil Gibran.
Oh, yes, I have heard the name, Khalil Gibran, yeah.
Okay, so.
Khalil Gibran, then Mirza Ghalib.
Yes, and his poems are wonderful.
Yeah. Then our respectable, one of the most prestigious poet in this subcontinent, not in the subcontinent, sorry, and from Iran or maybe from Afghanistan or any country. His name is Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi.
Yes, Rumi is also wonderful in his poems. I love them. And Rumi has been now acknowledged as one of the great spiritual teachers worldwide.
Yes.
In any time.
In our literature, I have studied a poem of Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, and it is the most important for in our literature on studying about Rumi, the Rumi researcher.
Yes, right. And you could research Rumi all your life and still keep learning.
Yeah.
Yes. So he said that he described living and dying and as coming back, as always, being aware. Should my voice fade in your ears and my love vanish in your memory, I shall return with the tide. And though death may hide me, forget not that I shall come back. A little while, a moment of rest upon the wind, and another woman shall bear me. Different person, probably different place, different everything, but same. Because we're not separate from each other. We are all part of the universal awareness. So Butterworth says the important thing is to know that you are an eternal expression of the universal flow. And there is no beginning and no end to you, just as there isn't to the river. We flow. Our awareness is in consistent flow.
Professor, have you heard the name of Sheikh Sadi?
Of who?
Sheikh Sadi.
I don't think so. Sheikh, S-A-G-I-K-H.
Yeah, Sheikh Sadi, S-A-D-Y, Sadi, Sheikh Sadi.
I don't think so. I'll look him up.
Then an Iranian poet,
Thank you.
Hafiz.
Okay. Oh, Hafiz. Yes, I have.
Yeah.
I love his poems too. And thank you for spelling Sheikh Hadi. I didn't
Yeah,
say that.
Sheikh Sadi, Sheikh Sadi.
Sadi, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, the idea is universal. It comes from like the Bhagavad Gita, which is a Hindu text, says, never the spirit was born. The spirit shall never cease to be. Never was time when it was not. End and beginning are but dreams. Birthless and deathless and changeless remains the spirit forever. Death has not touched it at all, dead though the body may seem. So, just being aware of the flow of life for ourselves and for everybody else is a really important awareness in every moment. And what says, when you feel grief, it's a sign that you're out of the flow and the darkness is in you, not everywhere. So getting back into the flow is important, and it's important to feel our grief and to acknowledge it, because when we don't, when we put it aside or we don't want to talk about it, then it stays in our body, and that's not good. Because when we have kept negative feelings in our body because we didn't want to deal with them, that causes illness. So, being in the moment, processing the moment, and knowing that we are part of the flow of life that goes on is very important, no matter how old or how young we are, or how safe we feel or don't feel. And that's...
No, Professor, I think that it's a relative matter. It depends, it's a kind of relative matter.
Relative. Yeah. But it's also, knowing that we're embracing the realness of the present moment, and the realness that although when we're in a body, we find it easy to believe that, okay, I'm separate from this other person and I need to do everything better than this other person, or I need to get better known than this other person. That's not true. We're all connected, like you said. That's what there is. That's what's true. And looking at life going on, our expression as an individual being seems really important to us especially when we're younger, in this physical body. And the more aware we become, the more we realize that the real energy of life is all over. And it's wonderful to be a part of it, but it's not, we're not outstanding in any particular way for a long time. It's all about just being a part of the love and the beauty and the life and the awareness in the universe that we'll always be a part of.
Professor, it can be said that, for an example, we know that smoking is injurious to health. So
That's right.
over smartness is also injurious to health. Over smartness is also injurious to health.
Yeah, it's nice to have a longer life than a shorter one in this body, but that's what that's about. It's about the body. And I can tell you that, yeah, it's great to be older and to be healthy. And, the body isn't going to go on forever. My body isn't, your body isn't. And that's okay. Because we really enjoy each other as expressions of that one universal life. And we know that our awareness goes on and comes back and functions where it's needed, and that we will continue to grow and learn as long as we're in this body and even after we leave it. And that's, that's the way it is. So I think it's interesting that he talks about this aspect of life, because it's a really important aspect as we go on living every day. It means we don't really need to be afraid of dying, which is one of the big fears that people have. I mean, life values itself, and we value being in this body. It's a wonderful experience, even if it is filled with struggles. It's also filled with joy and with love and with the power to change things physical, which we don't have outside the body, except through our ideas. So anyway, we're going to move on to talking about peace next week. And this has been a wonderful group, a wonderful experience.